Okay, well, we're sitting here Friday, April 5th, 1996. This is my first attempt at a video interview with a subject about World War II. Used the audio interviews before, and so I've asked Tom Griffin if he would sit down and visit with me for a while and create a video dialogue. And what I thought I would toss out as an opening question was, we know how the United States got into World War II when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. What would be interesting to find out as a starter is how you got into World War II.
I was living here in Rochester and working for Weber and Judd in 1942, so I left here and got into the service and returned to Weber and Judd in 1946. And it started, my home was West Concord, and I'd go up there, and so many people, kids and farmers that were in my class and so on, were getting called into service, and I couldn't get in because I'd been hit in the eye with a baseball and couldn't see good out of one eye. So I decided I'd go up to Fort Snelling and see if I could enlist. And after they checked my eyes, they said no, they wouldn't take me. So I went over to the Navy base and tried to get in, and they told me they'd take only one. I would go if they only took one-eyed soldiers or sailors. So then I went back, and our young doctor was there, and he was going to go in service too. And he said, "We'll fix you up. You just memorize the eye chart, the same chart they had at Fort Snelling." So I memorized the eye chart and went back up there, and I had to read the 20-40 line, and I'd memorized it, so I just gave the 20-40 line, and the sergeant that was there working with the officer, he said 20-40, and the other one was 20-20, so I got in. And so that was the start of my service. And then I came back home, and I had to leave in June of '42 to go to Fort Snelling. Well, I went up to Fort Snelling, and every night they would call a list of names of different people that got in the service to tell them which camps they were going to.
Now, was this for basic training?
Yeah, to send you to go to your basic training.
Okay.
Well, they'd do that at 2 in the morning, and then they'd ship you out about 3, 4 after you got everything ready. And so for a month, I stayed up there, getting up every night, going out for the call, and never got called. So I went into the office and said, "How come I don't get called?" Well, they didn't know, but they knew I was a pharmacist, and said, "I think they're waiting to assign you to a narcotics division." And then I waited a few more days and never heard any more, and it says, "Why don't you talk to the chaplain?" So he checked it out, and they didn't even have me listed at Fort Snelling. I wasn't even in the service. So he took all my records, and gave all the information, about my history, and 2 nights later, I got called and was sent to Little Rock, Arkansas, to Camp Robinson.
Okay, this is 1942 now.
Yeah, this was in 1942. So I went to Camp Robinson, and first thing we got up, we were 2 days and 2 nights just on this troop train. We didn't even know where we were going. It was all blacked out, because they took the troop train that way at that time. And you never got off, you just went. They even traveled other states to mix you up and stuff.
Oh.
So you wouldn't be able to say where you went, even ride home or anything. You didn't know just where you did go. And so we ended up in Little Rock that morning, and it was 106 down there. And first thing they did before you even went to your barracks and stuff, they took everybody in and gave them a GI haircut, all the same. Just took most of your hair off. And so right away I got assigned to teach down there, because I guess they knew on my record I had pharmacy and I was going to be in the medics, and that's a medical supply unit there, and so they had me teaching classes to 300 different people every day, and on being with hospitals and how they would do things in the service once they went with the medical administrative corps. And I was just a private, and the sergeants and lieutenants that were there were supposed to teach those classes, but some of them had no idea about drugs or anything it was, so I got assigned to that.
So you hadn't even gone through any basic training before you were doing this right off the bat?
Right off the bat.
Okay, so wartime, they got to improvise.
Yeah, and so then while I was doing that, I started taking my training for, you know, like drilling and all that.
Okay.
So we had these sergeants. I got in good with them because I was doing their work. So then they even taught me how to be a drill sergeant and all that stuff, and I went with them into town and that stuff, and I was just a private, and they'd been Army men for quite a while. So then we had to go through all those 25-mile hikes and all that stuff, you know. You had to get in shape and go through those obstacle courses, and even where they would have you crawl on your hands and knees, and they would shoot live bullets and some tracers, and you could see those flying over, and so you'd keep down, you know, and things like that. And then we'd go across a river there and had to go like a ladder across it, and if you didn't have the strength and could do it, you'd fall right in the river.
Right.
All that, so we did that. So then I'd had some training in driver's training, and they had to have somebody to teach these fellows. A lot of them were going to be truck drivers and weapons carrier drivers and all that, you know.
Right.
And so I took a little course there and taught them how to drive all those trucks, because we had hills there and everything, and you'd take them on that course, and some of those fellas, if you turned just wrong, those weapons carriers or whatever they had would be just about tipped over. You'd have to get fellas to go and help tip them back up. So I did that then.
Okay.
And so then, one day this general came in and listened to the lecture. And he asked me what I'm doing here. I said, well, that's the only thing I got to do. And he said, you're going to officer school. Well, and he went and told this captain I had in our company, he was a dentist, and he told him that I'm going to officer school. Well, a month later, he hadn't sent me, so he went over and told him again, and he said he wanted me to go, so he shipped him out.
So the general shipped the captain out?
Yeah, because he didn't take his orders to send me.
Okay.
And so then I knew I had the same problem, because I had to take a physical with my eye, but I'd been going over to where they had the infirmary and where they had the prescription stuff. It wasn't prescriptions, it was just a sergeant there that if you had chiggers or something, he'd mix up stuff, and so when he didn't know how to do that, he'd call me over, and I kept up with it. And so he was always the one that helped this other captain take your physical. So he told me he'd help me with that same thing our doctor did.
Oh, okay.
So I memorized the eye chart. We got over there, and I didn't know it, but I gave the same answers that he gave me that I had to, you know, on eye chart. And I gave those off on my left one, and he told this captain okay, and then I got the right one the same, I could get them all, and here it was a different eye chart. But they okayed it. He never paid any attention, this captain. He just went, and so then I went on to Abilene, Texas, and the 1st of January in 1943.
Okay.
And then I spent 3 months down there going to officer school.
Now, is this OCS?
Yeah.
What we refer to as 90-day wonders?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was a rough spot down there. Oh, I'll tell you, they put you through stuff. You know, they made it rough.
Yeah.
And you were just, if you went out to reveling retreat, you could stand there at attention. The sand would blow in your eyes, and it'd even cover your boots when you're standing there. And then when we had 30 of us, there were hundreds down there, and we had 30 in a barracks. And you had to keep the barracks clean, and they'd make you scrub them, and it would freeze, and you'd slide on the floors, because that's how, the difference in temperature sometimes. And when we went to have our food, they had these big garbage cans you dumped your mess gear in. And by the time you got in to pick up the food, water was frozen in the mess gear. And
oh, you dumped the trays, sure.
Yeah, and then you had to stand in this long line. See, even though that water was hot, to kind of sterilize it, you had to do that. Well, so then, let's see, we'd have checkup, you know, about how your clothes were and everything else, and I was about 6 foot tall and weighed 185, and when they gave me, you had to wear a lot of times those long coats.
Oh.
And they gave me one, the biggest they had or whatever left there, and it was so tight I couldn't stand and walk straight. And every time I'd be going, they'd have these officers drilling you, they'd make you real strict, and they'd keep hollering at me to straighten my shoulders and everything. Well, I couldn't, I was too tight, but they found that out. And so then when they would come in to inspect you, you know, every day, how neat everything you were, they'd just pull tricks on you all the time to get you to, you know, fight back. And so this one day, I'll never forget, they were coming in to inspect you for cleanliness and all that. And this officer, he stood there, and he has a sergeant with him writing down everything, and he looks at me. He didn't even look me practically right in the eye, you know, and not looking in my ears. And he says, "Griffin, dirt in the right ear. Griffin, dirt in the left ear." He didn't even look, so I knew he didn't.
Right.
So I didn't say, "You never looked." He left, and well, that was the end of it. I mean, they want you to spout back, you know.
They're testing your breaking point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when we were all through with that, down there, they make each one of us out of the 30 name 10 men that we lived with for 3 months that we wouldn't think would be the good. It wasn't that there might not be good officers, but ones we would pick that wouldn't be as good as the others.
Okay.
So then each person had to name 10, and then I suppose they go through that and see what all the rest of us thought about them.
Okay.
So you have all that to worry about and everything. And so then in the end of, that was on the 23rd of March, they called off all of us that were going.
That they were going to get commissioned.
So then, see, Alan and I had planned to be married on the 28th, but if I didn't pass, I couldn't go home.
Okay.
They shipped the rest of those right overseas.
Okay.
All right, so then there were 5 of us, and Helen knew then I was coming home, because I'd let her know, and I told her I'd be into Minneapolis on Wednesday night at 11 o'clock. And from Abilene we went to Dallas, and they had a blizzard there, just like what we had, and that plane was grounded. So there were 5 of us took a cab up there, and we were all heading up north, and all had the flight there. So we just got a cab and went over to Fort Worth. It's just about 20 miles away.
Right.
And the train was just leaving for Kansas City, and we didn't even, they said it in the office there, just get on the train and they'll get your tickets. Well, when we were about 30, 40 miles out of Fort Worth, that train had a hot box, and we were so tired we didn't know it wasn't even moving. And we never moved all night, and we didn't get into Kansas City until Friday night. And of course Helen didn't know where I was.
Right, okay.
But but I called her then at 10 o'clock from Kansas City, and then we took off from there. The train was going to leave pretty quick, and I think it was Albert Lee or Otana where they met me then on Saturday about noon, and then we were married Sunday, and then on, that would be the 28th, and then on Tuesday the 30th we had to head for Fort Bragg. That was my next assignment, so she went with me.
Out to North Carolina.
You want to turn that down just a second?